I'm sorry to wake you, but the things I tell you will not be wrong. The stem of the character development. First off, the movie has the detective pair at its center. They can represent intuition in Detective Park Do-man and aggression/force in Detective Cho Yong-koo, and they are joined by the third member Detective Seo Tae-yoon, from Seoul/Soul, completing the personality/identity with reason, logic, and science, a science which is forsaken in the end, but more on that later. The characters are portrayed poignantly in pursuit of their main ability, which is disguised in justice, represented by the police force, or rather said, they are tools of justice, formed from oppression and violence. This centers on, perhaps a commentary on the society's overtly use of violence. Everyone gets beaten and kicked in this movie. Again, I will return to this subject. Now back to the characters, with the main character planting a fabricated fake evidence, the shoe print in the mud, to force a confession out of the subject. Firstly, a disfigured uneducated boy, that is suspected as the killer, and thereafter a delinquent worker, and lastly, the educated student, in order to suit his premonition, intuition, and fulfill his function in society, thereby establishing justice. Conceptually, without crime, there is no justice, and justice is only perceived. It is in itself nothing or just an illusion, only established by and upheld by society. If crime leads to punishment, thereby creating justice. But enough of this. The movement in the characters is what drives the movie, and that aggression stays the same and static, portrayed by Detective Cho Yong-koo, and is hit by karma, the rusted nail of karma, that leads to an amputation of the kicking leg. This is a contrived description of a scene in the movie, where the disfigured boy, in a fight, hammers a rusted nail in his leg. But the real development and central drive occurs for the character of intuition Detective Park Do-man, shifting as the movie progresses, starting with every suspect being beaten into a confession. This coincides with Detective Seo Tae-yoon's character development, with rationality reverting to intuition. In a way, the two characters morphs into each other, culminating at the tunnel scene. Here I am a bit undecided in what I am to make of the characters, if they are all metaphors for only one combined personality/identity, that is only separated by memory, which the body represents in a way. That means, that there is in a sense, only one detective/identity, not three or two. The others are only representations of him, leading, inadvertently, to his transformation, but this also means that he, himself, is the murderer, that this is a journey in his memories. The disfigured boy does not confirm, in his last scene, again before a train intervenes, that the suspect is the killer. This can be because he knows it is the Detective Park Do-man, and cannot tell him, because it must be realized in the adult memory, because he knows that he is going to be killed, erased, or, maybe over-interpreting, the disfigured boy represent the detective himself again, meaning that his childhood, involving violence, has disfigured his sense and perception of justice, in a way that justice cannot be perceived. It is only there in the form of intuition's illusion. These conclusions are mainly based on the ending scenes, where science fails. Firstly, at the train tunnel, they receive the result of the DNA test, which does not correspond with the reality that they have forced into existence. The train tunnel is in this regard a metaphor for memories and the perception of memories, and thereby truth. The supposed murderer wanders in and disappears into the dark train tunnel, that is, returning to the host identity, the detective, which now, no longer is a police officer, but a salesman, and reinstates a point that is repeated in the movie, centering around the psychology of the murderer, which makes him return to the scene of the crime, in a way, to rediscover himself. So does the detective, maybe because he himself is the killer. Now, in the last scene, he meets a girl, which again is a prolonged metaphor for his self-understanding, which is portrayed in the form of memories. He asked if she remembered the face of a man, which she tells, had already been there before him, but she is only able to describe him as plain, ordinary, in a way, describing him without justice, or as a salesman, which he now is, and has lost, that is, justice, as he has lost his intuition, or stopped believing in his own intuition/truth. This is also a recurring theme, that he thinks he can spot a criminal, just by looking into the eyes of any person, which in irony, is himself, or rather, he is blind to himself. He loses this belief at the train tunnel, but saves the killer, when Seo Tae-yoon tries to kill him, bound with handcuffs behind his back, or, the body that represents the killer, and now, cannot recognize himself, when looking at the girl, meaning, he can't recognize himself either, because he has become common, ordinary, forgotten, a memory. This points towards the commentary on society and the identity of individuality, that the killer is in everybody, but is brought out, or born by the constrictions of society, meaning that justice fundamentally and conceptually created the killer, in order to gain existence. The girl in this interpretation, sees the detective 2 times, she just don't remember him, only their conversation. I am tending towards this conclusion, with the ending shot of the movies focusing on him, his face, as a prolonged extension of a violent society, what is inevitably creates, meaning in short, that there is a killer in everybody, buried in the memory, or rather, in the psychic construction of the human being and identity. The condition is just formed, under certain circumstances in the human, but lays dormant, like showing a serial murderer living a normal life under special conditions, if he is not awoken, by looking into the tunnel of memories.